There we go. Cool. So, really excited to share valuable thinking. I think this will be a great resource for everybody in the NLP network just to refresh and remind themselves of valuable thinking. Sometimes you'll have a client and you can come back to this and go, now I can see where they're at and maybe use it as a reflection tool. So, valuable thinking was developed by a gentleman called Claire Graves. It's also known as spiral dynamics. So, if you want to do your own research on it, please feel free to do so. Um, and it's about the development of our neurology and our thinking linked to our values and what motivates us, uh, based around the environment that we're in and how that affects us. So we change the environment we're in, and our valuable thinking will change. So, Cyrus, you moving from the corporate world to what you're doing, your valuable thinking will be evolving as a result. We change our neurology. We actually go through some coaching or some therapy, or some counseling, and our thinking changes, and then as a result, our valuable thinking changes. And of course, knowledge of valuable thinking itself can't not change your valuable thinking because you become aware of valuable thinking and you start leaning more in a direction because you're more aware of your own valuable thinking. So I think it's really useful to understand valuable thinking from a number of levels. I mentioned this a little bit offline before. It kind of helps us to respect where a client's coming from. And also not just a client. Sometimes we have friends or colleagues who really challenge us with their beliefs and their attitudes. Um, and then it can, and also in the modern world and social media and news being at our fingertips, it also helps us to respect worldviews. Don't have to agree with them, but we can respect them and be more at peace with them. Helps us, and actually that's a good thing for us, never mind anything else. It helps us to see big picture of where clients are, um, and where they're heading, but also from a deeper coaching journey for those who want to go deeper with their coaching, it also helps us appreciate where the client may be stuck. Because at different values levels, there are different stuck points, different negative emotions in play, different internal conflicts, and different limiting decisions that create part of their stuckness. We've seen lots of people in our training courses who've been moving from employment to running their own business. We've also seen lots of people in the coaching setup have been running their own business to into retirement. And all of those reflect values of our thinking shifts, which can be quite uncomfortable. So we're going to walk through the different values of our thinking, the different ways of thinking, and what also might be an indicator of stuckness at those points. And again, like I say, if any point you want to ask a question, just unmute and interrupt me. Um, so we talk about primarily 8 different values levels. There are more. There are values level 9 and 10. I can't really explain much beyond 8, which says a little bit about my own values level thinking. But when I first started doing this, I couldn't really explain values level 7 particularly well. So as we grow and evolve, it's easier to understand the higher levels of values level thinking. Having said that, it's also important to understand that higher doesn't necessarily mean better. You wouldn't want to be a 18-year-old living in values level 6, and we'll explain more about that as we go through. There's evolution. These values level thinking actually match certain areas of our life. And if we flow gently through values levels as we grow and evolve, then that our life will flow with that. Equally, we can probably all recognize times we get stuck. So when we're born, clearly we're in survival mode. We're relying on our mother, our parents for survival. And yet, of course, there are also adults who are in survival mode on the planet. They need others to survive. Um, and there can be external circumstances and factors involved in that, or it can be that the environment and a certain background has led to them being in survival mode. I've got interestingly, I saw a friend of mine's just retired, a guy called Jack, and he told me a story on my NLP training of how he was on homeless. And it completely floored me actually, because this guy was an ex-CEO of a water company and now a professor, and literally one of the cleverest, most articulate speakers I've ever seen. But he explained where he was at and what was going from in his life back when he was homeless. So I learned a lot from listening to him. And then we can see tribal, we can see plenty of tribal thinking in the UK. A lot of football fan behaviour is tribal. Crikey, Brexit got a bit tribal, didn't it? Political opinions can be tribal. And if we're in tribal level thinking, and of course there are tribes, literally, we do have tribes in the planet, and with various rituals. We also have inner city gangs, which again is an example of tribal behavior. So if we're growing up in inner city and we're struggling to survive, then we may find ourselves in a gang to survive, to become stronger. Stronger as part of the tribe rather than as an individual as on our own. You see it in the playground as well. We go into primary school on our own or with a significant friend, and then we join a clique or a group. So we can see this through our own children as well. And actually, one of the other ways I think valuable thinking is really useful to know is as a parent. It's really helpful to not judge certain parts of our child's evolution, because after that tribal phase of we're part of the group, I always tell this story of my daughter Ellie running in the school sports day where her friend fell over and she stopped and went to pick a friend up and they finished the race together. Beautiful thing. She wouldn't do that now. She'd be going, see ya, I'm off. So that because values level 3 then becomes about identity. I want to win, I want to dominate, I want to compete, I want to be the best. So win-lose thinking, and all of a sudden we don't want to be part of the gang, we want to be the leader of the gang. And again, we can. The interesting about values level 3 is that all the energy comes from beating somebody else without anybody to defeat or any enemy. There's no energy. So it's the businessman who wants to kill the competition, for example. And I think in the world at the moment, we've got quite a lot of examples of values level 3 thinking going on. I'm not going to mention any names, of course, during this, but you can make your own interpretations. And of course, countries operate at different values level thinking, because if you've got a country who's largely in values level 3, it will be corrupt. There'll be more corruption because it's about winning and dominating. Whereas at values level 4, good old values level 4, we now adopt a system and a rightful higher authority. And there's lots of positives around having a system. It's actually about the development of civilization. We've now got a system, we've got a banking system, we've got a tax system, we've got inland revenue, we've got local government, we've got the NHS, we've got the armed forces, the police force. All of these are values level 4 systems which we need for society. However, if anyone's worked in any of those systems, there comes a point where, and actually corporates who may have been materialistic when they began, often drop back to being values level 4 because they end up being that big, everything's managed through systems. So if you're involved in those, there's lots of positives, and actually it's a really good thing if we're transitioning out of values level 3 to 4, because at values level 4 we've got to be on time, we've got to have duty, morality, responsibility. It's part of that maturation of growing up. After a while, though, working within a system, people will get fatigued. I know I certainly did, where I remember being asked to record what I was doing every hour of every day. And I thought, what? Who's decided that's a good idea? And that desire for more freedom, you can see the link with motivational maps here, that desire for freedom from the system begins to arrive. And our values level 5, more entrepreneurial, win-win thinking starts to evolve, where and you also see in values level 4 is the people who end up leading values level 4 systems are those who've stuck around the longest. Not necessarily those who've actually got the clearest thinking, because often the values level 5 thinkers leave because they can't cope with the level of bureaucracy. And then you end up in values level 5, and this is where a lot of my coaching clients are. They're now running their own business, they're entrepreneurs, they operate on win-win thinking, lots of positives. Their revenue is linked to their performance. They like that. But one of the problems with that, once you've been doing that for a period of time, is it can feel like, who am I if I'm not the successful entrepreneur or the successful businessman? There's an identity that can be created around it. And gradually, values level 6 thinking awakes, which is around, and this is where you'll often see business people. And interesting, you can be in values level 6 and having not made lots of money, or you can be in values level 6 having been a successful business person or entrepreneur or sports person, and now you're in values level 6 and you'll see people being philanthropic or doing lots of charitable work. One of mine and Danny and Haley's good friends, Sean, goes to South Africa every month and builds schools in South Africa for a month. And it's been part of his routine for the last 10 years. So it's charitable action, giving without thought for result. But again, at Values Level 6, there is a challenge because at Values Level 6, the primary focus is of not doing any harm. And interestingly, from my coaching practice, I'm going to stop and pause for questions in a minute. In my coaching practice, I see quite a lot of Values Level 6 thinkers who their Values Level 6 thinking of not doing any harm, they've evolved quite quickly to that place because of their own suffering and their own struggles, which has then led to this mindset. Well, I've experienced that. That wasn't very nice. I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone else. And so they evolve quite quickly as a human being as a result of that. The challenge with Values Level 6 is it can be, without awareness, it can be quite judgmental. It's the I mean, my mate Sean, who would not mind me talking about him, he is the most gentle, polite, grateful human being. But if you order pork at the restaurant, he will mention it. He will mention the fact you're eating a dead animal. So there can be that's at a subtle level. Equally, at a more extreme level, you can get values level 6 thinkers who then all of a sudden, in the face of values level 3 behavior, their level of thinking drops incredibly, and you end up with eco-terrorists because they're now battling for a good cause, but actually their thinking's just dropped incredibly because they think it's rightful anger. All of a sudden, you see this, whoa, where did that come from? Um, so you sometimes see that with that kind of behavior. And one more thing about values level 6, and I think this is really important, the structure of abusive relationships is often a values level 3 thinker with a values level 6 thinker. And the values level 6 person says, I'll just love them a bit more. And the values level 3 person goes, great, I'll just take a bit more. And it continues and it continues and it continues. I have witnessed just this conversation with a friend and a client of mine help them to manage an abusive relationship and ultimately exit it. Because if your value, and it's an interesting thing as a parent, because as a parent, what do I struggle with? Well, I struggle as a parent sometimes to create boundaries and structure and discipline. But actually, kids will be manipulative as they grow up to try and test their boundaries, and we have to create that discipline, right? So it's interesting. Sometimes you get values level 6 parents, really evolved human beings who struggle with parenting because they've got to create firm boundaries, which of course may not come naturally at values level 6 or 7. Well, certainly not as naturally at values level 6. And that's a nice segue into values level 7. Values level 7 is like 6, but without the judgment. And all of a sudden at values level 7, you individuals have the ability to communicate with different people at the values level thinking that they're at. At values level 7, they'd be able to run a junior sports session for a group of 8-year-olds and enter into that model of the world. But they'd also be completely comfortable in a boardroom having conversations with senior leaders and feel completely comfortable in that environment as well. It's that ability to flow in and out of different environments and enter into the way of thinking, and be comfortable with that and communicate from that place. There is a slight challenge at values level thinking as well. Although life will become more effortless with a lot less drama, it can be quite solitary because there are very few values level 7 thinkers on the planet, and not so many in your local environment. So it's quite important if you're coaching somebody at values level 7 to help them find a community or a group of like-minded thinkers so that they can actually feel like they're growing and evolving rather than feeling isolated. So I'm going to pause. And one final thing on that nobody is just in one values level. Typically, we have 3 different values level thinking. One that we are transitioning out of, one that we're in, and our life. The best way of knowing where your thinking is most likely in is your life. If you're employed and you're working in a values level 4 enterprise, you're in values level 4. Values level 5 thinking's probably awake because that shift's probably coming. If you're running your own business on your own terms, you're in values level 5. Um, Values level 6 thinking might be awake, and values level 7 thinking might be awake. So our environment actually tells us where our predominant thinking is. And interestingly, clearing up the debris of the previous values level is what helps us evolve. Right. Enough talking from me. I did say I'd just go off on one. So any questions, anything that anyone wants to ask about any of those values or thinking, or yeah, anything that you want to point out or ask?
It's not a question. It's just you asked at the beginning about how's life and what's going on, and obviously we've all got stuff going on in our lives. So in my life at the moment, I've got someone who is going through a divorce, who is I think pretty much in the level three, very much. But what I'm trying to do, I'm where I am, I'm probably level five, I suppose. Trying to talk to him in a way that's more level five when he's in level three. I suppose that's the thing. So how do you sort of communicate to somebody that's in
Yeah.
that low, well, not lower level, but another level?
Yeah.
And I've also got someone in my life who's contemplating retiring and seeing a shift in just different sort of behaviors going on there. And I've
Yeah.
also got someone in my life who's going has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So all
Yeah.
these things, that's what's going through my mind. Where are these people in this sort of
Yes.
hierarchy, I suppose? So,
Yeah, good. Well, look, I love that, Mark, because that's really what valuable thinking's about.
hmm.
I remember working with a water skier once who just wanted to get better at water skiing so he could win. And here was me trying to get him to read Deepak Chopra and meditate. And I was just completely off base with my coaching at that time, and it caused humor and reflection. So if it's okay, what I'll aim to do, Mark, is pick up those points through the rest of the talk. And if I don't,
Hmm?
hold me accountable to coming back to them at
That's
the
what I was
end.
hoping you would do. So that might help
Yeah,
me
yeah. Yeah, yeah, well,
get
good.
some
And look,
value.
that and this is why I think it's valuable thinking is a really good reflection tool for coaches. Because it helps you reflect on where you're at, but where your client's at, and how you can more effectively meet their needs. Love it. Thanks, Mark. And like I say, if I don't answer those questions well enough, please check in at the end. Um, Cyrus, any thoughts or questions?
Well, I like Mark's ones actually. I kind of would like to know how if you're in one, you help someone in another.
Yeah,
I think I'll wait for you to go through that, Bevis. Also, I
yeah,
don't think I've really understood number seven, but maybe I
yeah.
just need a bit more time through this session.
Good, good. Well, that's lovely. And just a couple of things. I'm just going to just talk a little bit about divorce, and I've seen this with a number of clients recently where when under stress, values or thinking goes backwards. So you see somebody who's normally a values level four thinker, system, morality, duty, responsibility, commitment, hard work. Like my one of my best friends is values level four thinker. And he's incredible, like super bright, super clever. He works for NATO. He's one below the senior leadership team. Like I wish he was prime minister. He's an incredible guy. Um, Interesting when he talks, he sometimes the organization they can never hire a PA for him, so he's always incredibly busy because by the time they get through the system of hiring a PA, that PA's found another job somewhere else. Now that's quite interesting at that level how we've got that level of thinking, and yet sometimes the flexibility isn't there. If you've got somebody in a divorce, you'll find that their level of thinking will drop to values of three, and the desire to fight will emerge from the ego. And now the problem with fighting is if you win, someone else loses. And of course, in a lot of divorces, you end up with two people trying to win and two lots of values or three thinking. So it's rightful higher authority is often the right place to come from in when you're in that place. And we'll talk more about that as we go through because I think the understanding of the different levels will evolve as we go in a bit more depth, and values level thinking knowledge will come up as well, I think. We're unlike to see many values level one thinkers as a coach. So survival is most important at this level. Values level two. Interestingly, values level 2 is linked with 8. There'll be a belief in God, superstition, consciousness in all things, clan, ritual, gatherings, superstition, maybe even a belief in magic. Values level 2, a lot of, and there is a link with 8, and 8's very different to 2, but there is actually a link, which we'll come back to at the end. It's an interesting one, less consciousness or less awareness of self. So if you think of children, children's self-consciousness kicks in around 6 or 7 or 8, usually around 6 these days. So pre-6, they're largely invisible too. They're not really aware of themselves or out of, they've got their kind of part of the group. They're not really have that self-consciousness yet. Which is a lovely thing. So obviously, clearly, if we're coaching invisible too, we need to be friendly, and actually gradually give them the task of being outside the group. If you think about being a parent, you kind of gradually grow your kids' confidence to enter that different environment, have a go at this new activity, and they grow the growing confidence of them being more independent. Interesting, we mentioned rage therapy. So rage therapy is actually a thing. If somebody's experienced not very nice things as a child, actually being able to express anger strongly and vehemently helps keep them safe. Further down the road, you wouldn't want that or need that, but actually at a certain point of life, it can be quite useful to keep people safe. I know Jamie, one of our coaches, Jamie's done work within the city gangs. That rang some bells for him, working with young people in certain environments. So values level 3. Now it's interesting when you think about politics right now. Obviously, identity of self is now important as a child. I just love the title, Express Now to Hell with Others. I'm going to express myself now, and what I don't care what anyone else thinks. To hell, and there's a freedom with that. We have to fight to win. The world is hostile, so we're constantly trying to beat the enemy and find ways to defend ourselves from the enemy. A lot of fear, not a lot of guilt. The guilt will come later on in life. Not at the time. All about ego satisfaction. We want to make it. So you talk about young kids trying to make it. I wanted to make it as a professional cricketer. Now I think, well, once you become a professional cricketer, there's something next. There's something next. Well, you never really make it. What does make it even mean? So risk, adventure, conquer, raw, rugged, assertive, might makes right, survival, honor among thieves, and eye for eye. Right, daring, power. And again, going back to the divorce example, often you'll see values level 4 and 5 thinkers drop into values level 3. Often from a place of hurt. I've been hurt and now I'm trying to fight and trying to win and dominate. But problem with winning in a relationship, someone else loses, which ultimately means you lose. Negative emotions at this stage: shame, rage, grief, disgust. The hurt's hidden, and it comes out as rage, anger, typically. So if we're coaching somebody at values level 3, never punish them. Refrain from getting them to meditate or listen to Deepak, as I have done in the past. Make sure you've got your certificates on display because you are the higher authority in coaching. Values level 3 will not respect the charity worker. They'll respect the police force. They respect authority. They don't respect the fluffy person who's just out there. They're seen as a mark or a mug. So again, think about certain characters on the world stage at the moment. Short tasks, structured sessions. I've got a golf client at the moment who's 18. Coaching session never lasts more than 20, 25 minutes. You can see him gradually losing the will to live if we go beyond that. So it's challenging me as a lovely, lovely lad, growing, evolving, and actually golf's being a vehicle for his personal evolution. It's great to see. We want to help the client let go of rage, anger, shame, and fear as well. Any questions on values level 3 before we go on to 4? Cool. Hales, how are you doing?
Yeah, obviously just absolutely in my element right now. Thank you very much.
Cool. Okay. And again, if anything crops up you want to share, just do so, yeah?
Sure.
Cool. So values level 4 is most of the United Kingdom, by the way. So the UK is largely a values level 4 country. Tad James, who's the creator of timeline therapy, once famously said that America was a values level 5 country. And we've got some interesting examples of what's going on in America and different levels thinking. which may it may agree with that or it may contradict that. Values level 4 is the most restrictive of values levels, in that there's a lot of guilt because we get a lot of societal conditioning of what we should, need, must, have to. So it's the rules that we've been taught, what we need to do to fit into society. I know my daughter's struggling at the moment because she actually get on a 7:44 bus in the morning to go to secondary school. And that's a challenge for her. She's got to turn up on time, get her uniform up. She's a night owl rather than early riser. It's hard work for her. So values level 4, typically it can be quite judgmental. There's one right way to do things. This is the right way. Lots of rules, and we gradually grow the number. If we're not sure on the answer, we'll write another rule in the rule book, and the rule book will keep growing and growing and growing. There can be suppressed emotion at values level 4. And there can also be codependent relationships. Our primary focus in values level 4 is the group. We're looking after others. And that's a really important point. Values level 2, 4, 6, and 8, our focus is on others and the group. Values level 3, 5, and 7, our focus is on ourselves primarily. So values level 4 will often be judgmental of, interestingly, of business owners or entrepreneurs, because there'll be this subtle judgment that they may have done something illegal or they've cheated the system somehow. Again, the previous generation, or my parents' generation, much more values level 4 thinking than this. More people now run their own business than ever. But you will know, I had a conversation with somebody on the golf course who was trying to convince me it must be so difficult to run your own business at the moment. And I was like, not really. And he couldn't really, he's desperate to convince me how hard it was. I was like, no, it's actually quite fine. In the end, I kind of gave up. So it's a good example of, like, he was in his model of the world, he couldn't see how it would be easy or fluent to run your own business. So if you're coaching somebody around values level 4, the key words: moralistic, compassion, should, must, quite a lot of disapproval, dogma, rigid rules, discipline. Lots of strengths in values level 4 is like the ability to show up, commitment, routine. And our kids need to go through values level 4 at some stage, because they're going to, Ellie's got to learn to work with the system of education while she's in it. Negative emotions, lots of guilt at values level 4, because actually when we transition to values level 5 and all of a sudden you've got freedom to run your own business in the way in which you want to run it, you often feel quite guilty for having that freedom, because we've been so conditioned. Like, I know a good friend of mine who really struggled with not working 9 to 5 because of all the conditioning of what you should work. I remember feeling really guilty playing golf on a Wednesday morning, because even though that was the goal, there was a lot of guilt I had to overcome because it wasn't what I was taught you should do. So if you're coaching values level 4, structured, which you're likely to do, you're likely to have clients in values level 4. Structured sessions, you're in charge. Again, you know the right way. You're an authority on coaching. You're going to help the client, if they're transitioning into 5, let go of guilt, unworthiness, maybe even some righteousness. Tasks can often include buying or doing something or investing in themselves, which can be a problem. Actually, I'm feeling okay with investing in themselves rather than the group. That can also feel quite alien. They may struggle to buy into coaching proposals because they may subtly judge the investment for themselves. How can I possibly invest that amount of money in myself? Whereas they'll weirdly, in my model world, pay more per hour because it's less of an investment. And they'll pay for the hour and we'll just see how it goes. They'll dip in the toe and then they'll do the next hour and then they'll do next hour, and they may well end up paying more than if they bought into the proposal. I remember referring a client of mine to Hayley to have a conversation with Hayley about her experience of coaching to help her invest in herself. Because actually the block wasn't the money. She had the money. She was just struggling to make that commitment and investment in herself. And actually there's a phrase in coaching that the client overcomes half the problem by becoming a client in the first place, because they have to overcome some of their thinking to actually become a client. So I'm going to pause there, because understanding values level 4 is really important, because actually it's the most common values level thinking in the UK right now. So any questions on either four or three?
Again, not a question, but it's just observation. The person I mentioned that was thinking about retirement has been in the same organization for 42 years.
Yeah.
And so obviously level four is where they're at. And I suppose where are they heading? Can they actually see that level five? Or are they, I suppose you could drop or go to level three when you're going through a big change, even though it's something that you want. It's alien to you, so it's not something you've ever experienced.
Yes.
To go from straight from education into an organization and then work for them for all that time, and then this is about a big change in lifestyle. And a little bit what you just talked about is about, does this feel right? Is this, am I worthy? Or all those things, those weird things that we have to justify, which we are in our heads.
Absolutely, Mark. And I
Mm,
think you know that somebody's in most of my coaching clients are in a valuable thinking transition. So and when they're in a transition, it's uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable. And often they'll go a little bit backwards. They'll revert on old strategies before they adopt their new life. And I would be tempted to tell a few scary metaphors about the link between retirement and death. And in a gentle way, but also like explain valuable thinking to them, explain the difference between valuable four and five, and the actual it maybe find an investment in herself or himself to actually take the next level and shift their thinking so they can have some more, enjoy that great freedom and
mm,
talk about the guilt. So you don't want to, I mean, going from retirement for 42 years to nothing, whew, that's a big shift.
mm, mm.
So these are, I think it's the awareness around valuable thinking in those areas is really useful, really useful. Love it. Cool. Anything else around values level three or four before we move on to five?
I just want to make a couple of quick remarks listening to you two. Mark, did you know that actually one of the fastest growing client groups for coaches are people who are entering retirement? It's one of the fastest growing segments, and actually it's dominated by guys rather than women going into retirement. Women seem to have their shit together actually and know what they're doing, and or have already had different life experiences which have caused them to shift modes through their lives. So I'm mentioning that to you, and this values level thinking actually, I suppose if I ever had a client that was talking to me about this, I mean, as a guy who has semi-retired 2 years ago, right, I would actually be saying, okay, you do know you're supposed to let go, perhaps, of the way you used to think when you were a different persona in a different life with a different role. And do you want to let go of that persona? Or is it something you actually want to hold and extend into your retirement life somehow? So, I mean, that's I'm just mentioning that. The other thing, Bevis, the health issue of people going into retirement. I I do have a bit of a social circle, but I wouldn't say it's the largest social circle on the planet. But I do have a friend a year younger than me who had a cardiac event 3 weeks ago after leaving his professional life after 40 years.
Yeah.
And this is a healthy guy, golf, road cycling, doesn't eat meat, blah, 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 blah. And I think I think it was a shockwave of some form that got him. It's a genuine risk.
Yeah, we talk about that, Cyrus, and by the way, I love your really considered feedback on conversations to have because you could go from, I mean, my dad did it. My dad retired as a teacher and then carried on working for 10 years. Um, and it kind of worked for him. It was a gradual transition. He went out and did Mori
Mm.
polls going door to door. It's a really good conversation. You definitely don't want to go from 42 years to stopping because that is as we know. And interestingly, me and Hales were sharing on the Timeline Therapy Master Practitioner something called the health paradigm, where I described I'd had a cold, and what we believe in the more holistic circles is that that cold's come from somewhere, and I know where it came from because I'd woken up at 6 a.m. to play golf because I love my golf. Then my mate had been made redundant and he'd asked to go out for a beer, and I was still up at 11:30 at night having had 4 beers. Woke up the next morning with a cold. So there, the health crisis arrived straight after the trauma, which wasn't much of a trauma. Whereas if you've had 42 years where you've been under a form of stress that you weren't really aware of, and then that stress stops suddenly, then the health crisis will be more significant, and often a year or 2 years after the end of the stress. So,
I remember when I sold my business, Bevis, on that point, I booked to go away. I booked an all-inclusive week away in Mallorca on my own, and literally I couldn't eat for the week.
What?
I literally had everything laid out, and I literally went to the restaurant and I couldn't eat.
yeah,
And I was thinking, what's the point? Why did I bother? I could have just gone bed and breakfast. I literally, I was just so screwed up with after 5 months of going through the process, and also not really knowing what comes next. I think that, I mean, that was
yeah,
just resonating with what you just said. I mean,
yeah.
I've been through it myself, sort of, what was it, 14 years ago now. So.
And I think the beautiful thing about this is we can relate values or thinking to our life experience, which we can then share with our clients, because there's nothing more empathetic than sharing our own experience. Whether it be a day of not enough sleep and too many beers followed by a cold, or whether it be 5 months of stress followed by a week or two where we can't eat, or whether it be 42 years trying to retire and then quite a serious incident, it's the same process going on, and being aware and mindful of that. And actually, Cyrus, most of my clients are transitioning in some way. Often, not all of them, clearly, I've got 19, but there are probably the highest predominant are people moving into retirement. And actually, the mission of
Really?
Magenta, yeah, selling their business, moving into the next phase of their life. And our mission, helping people to enjoy success, is actually leaning into that. It's not about creating success, because most of my clients can do that. It's about enjoying it, which is a very different mindset. Very different mindset. So, values of five, which is, I think, 1 in 7 people run their own business now, something like that. 1 in 7, 1 in 8. So it's the highest it's ever been. So at values of five, people are competitive. They want to be more and be the best. They may be materialistic. You can see values of four people with values of five thinking open, but they might be blocked at this stage to go and do their own thing. Business is important, science rather than fluff. Conscious mind, so conscious mind is important. They'll love coaching, personal development, training, so they can be the best version of themselves is quite a valuable five phrase. I want to be the best version of myself. Okay, cool. Um, and actually, it's interesting when I first did value level thinking on my master prac course back in 2010, I tried to game the system in that when I did the test, I tried to come out as value level 7. And I did. I know it's ridiculous, but it gives you an indication of me back in 2010, right? That's where I was at that point. So I tried to game the system, and I did come out as value level 7. But as I went through reading through the description of value level 6, I was like, I'm not in value level 7 because I've been nowhere near value level 6 at that stage. Um, good. Good. So we want to help Values All Five evolve and grow because they want to evolve and grow. Um, and gently and gradually we'll want to get them just being, interestingly, at Values All Five, they'll have no issue with investing significant sums of money in themselves to progress and develop. So they have no issue. So if you put a coaching proposal together, ditch the hourly rate and make it a significant sum, which gives them the commitment that I'm going to really commit to my personal development. It's a very different proposition coaching entrepreneurs to coaching a managing director of a corporate. Very different. Very different. Good. Both high performers often, but very different. So keywords at Valuable 5, manipulation, afraid of inadequacy. There'll be a bit about their identity, practical, survival of the fittest. They want some studies and proof and evidence. So your metaphors are important. You won't be you you won't be prescribing tasks. You'll be negotiating them. You'll be giving tasks that are this is a suggested action for you to consider taking, as opposed to this is the task. Values will 4, no problem with task, but 5, they won't like being given. Again, you can see the link to the spirit driver. Dispassionate, logical, objective. Interestingly, a lot of entrepreneurs are driven by something pretty dark in the past. So the deeper work works really well. I've got a friend of mine who I'm actually running a business with who's dipping his toe in the water of coaching with me. I think we've had 3 sessions over about a year. And he's kind of dipping his toe in and dipping it out again because he's not quite ready yet. Because actually, the fear and the stuff that happened to him when he was younger has driven him to incredible success. It also means if he's not careful, he's going to have a health crisis later on if he doesn't let go of some of that hurt and pain from the past. So interestingly, the tasks, now we're at the stage where the tasks around meditation, inner work, journaling might land. They'll struggle with it to begin with, but we want to get the client to slow down, more in reflective work, and maybe get them to do something that's got no material outcome in of itself. And of course, win-win coaching packages work at this stage. So I'm going to pause again at Values World 5. Is this ringing any bells in terms of people you know or characters that you've spent time with? Observations or quite happy with 5? Yeah, yeah, cool. Awesome. And then if we think about Values World 6, I think Values World 6 to 7 is one of the biggest transitions because at Values World 6, and again, I always think of certain characters. At Values World 6, you get typically at somebody who's pretty chilled. They're pretty laid back. Well, they're, they're pretty chilled, although they might have emotional waves and turbulence. They're generally, when you're around them, there's kind of a grounding effect of being around them. They may either have no money because they haven't made a success of Values Level 5, they've transitioned kind of very quickly to Values Level 6, or they'll have been successful in Values Level 5 and now be slowing down. The ideal, Cyrus, with Values Level 6 is you've been through your career, now you're retiring and you're in Values Level 6, and that's the ideal. So the unconscious mind becomes important at this stage. They may, and they're likely to have some unresolved stuff from Values Level 2, 3, 4, and 5 to deal with, which will allow them to actually slow down fully and properly. Because without dealing with those, we'll still be running some of the conditioning from some of the rules from Values Level 4 about working hard. The belief you have to work hard is a Values Level 4 belief, and that's a real problem if you're trying to retire. Values Level 5, the identity of being the entrepreneur, is what the client needs to let go of to then successfully slow down. And I've worked with so many. I remember one of my first clients ran his own construction company. He was about to build a new office premises in Brighton that he didn't want to build. And he said to me, I'm only motivated if my arse is hanging out the window. Never forget it. It's a phrase from the Mapping Motivation for Coaching book, that career coaching story. And it was a really lovely journey because we need to do some of the deeper stuff to clear the past, which then allowed him to hire a financial director and work 4 days a week and start that journey to slowing down. And he never did build the offices in Brighton. He didn't need to. Business was already a success. So keywords at Values Level 6, you'll have somebody who's more sensitive, spiritual, and they will definitely not want to hurt other people's feelings. So a lot of the coaching tasks, I might ask you to contribute in a second, Haley. A lot of the coaching tasks will be around holding boundaries and making sure that, because one of the problems with being at Values Level 6 is you're surrounded by people who are at Values Level 3, 4, and 5. So if you're not careful, and if you're in a giving profession in Values Level 6, you can, and this is where a lot of nurses get burnt out, a lot of holistic professionals, counselors, therapists get burnt out. You can give too much of yourself. It's one of the issues at Values Level 6. Negative emotions. So depression, guilt, hurt. It's an interesting word, narcissism, because we can be the victim of narcissism. And a lot of there's a healing journey, and then part A is the healing journey, part B is the letting go of judgment of others who still behave in those ways. So I'm just going to cue you in, Hales, around Valuable Six, if that's okay. Anything you want to share or add to that?
Yeah, it's actually just really nice to, obviously, because of all the work we've done, I'm I've heard of all the values now, but just to now approach it to coaching specifically is actually being like really helpful. Yeah. I've heard about all the different levels for a while, so I feel like my knowledge around the levels is quite extensive now. But to actually approach the coaching styles with whoever I might be working with, and the level that they're in, and how you can help them,
Yes.
is yeah, it's really lovely. There's at least two people in mind who are very much in values level 4. One struggling with health, so isn't working, but still has the mindset attached to values level 4, and has got some quite severe health issues. So looking at this information that you're giving me now is going to be really helpful for that person. And then somebody else has got issues in their relationship, and they're, again, now I see even more clearly than ever before, their values level 4 thinking, not so much in their world of working, but in their world of their relationships, and how much responsibility they feel for their partner, and where that is keeping him extremely stuck. And in fact, I just actually had a conversation the other day, and it was lovely that I noticed, and instead of obviously coming at it from where I can come from, I just was asking the specific questions to kind of break down the parameters of the belief system a little bit, and the little light bulb moments were going off throughout the conversation. So this now makes sense, which is lovely.
Brilliant. We talk a lot about the client's model of the world, and if you think values all 4, there's a frame around the client's model of the rules based on all the rules. Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The 4 Agreements, is a great book for somebody in values all 4, because they'll see, he talks about the process of domestication, how we've been domesticated, and those rules aren't real. They're just thoughts, which we act as if they are real. Values of 5, we have a different border, but the border of being the entrepreneur, and actually, who am I if I'm not this perceived successful person, which again is limiting. And values level 6, again, we have a border around our thinking, which is I can't hurt anyone else. Now, the problem with not being able to hurt anyone else is it makes it difficult to hold your boundaries. And that's really important. Values level 6, these are my boundaries, and communicating clearly about those boundaries is really super important. Good. And a lot of values level 6, often clients become aware of some hurt they haven't yet dealt with, because they're projecting their own hurt out in the judgment of someone else based on something that they may have thought they dealt with that just has a little bit of residue left, typically. And then we end up in, oh, interesting, coaching style, nearly forgot that. So be part of the group. We don't need to be authoritarian, honest and open. And the task to learn is a bit like from transitioning from 2 to 3 with our parenting. We want to get our children to explore something new. It's the same with values level 6 onwards. Learn something new without the group and without support. So it's kind of that, but at a different level of our experience of life. We're going to go and do something independent, do something new, and do something for ourselves again. Oh yes, and just in case. It's not. It's appropriate for some values level 6 thinkers, not others. For some values level 6 thinkers, actually, they've already made their money and it's all sorted. But for others, they haven't, and they have to make sure they may have to pick up some values level 5 learning, and to go out and be independent, learn to be independent again. I had a friend of mine, a chap called Callum, who evolved very quickly and in his early 20s was in Values Level 6. And it was really interesting because he actually co-trained NLP Master Prac with me. He turned up to the course in a police escort because he was driving around without insurance. And he built such good rapport with the police officer that the police officer gave him a lift to the course, which I just think is Callum all over. I was like, wow. And it was really fascinating because that's the day we were talking about values all thinking. He was sat next to me going, oh yeah, shit, I haven't. He hadn't learned some of the values of all four, some of the things you need to take responsibility for. He hadn't yet made a success of his entrepreneurial coaching practice yet. He has now. He's flying, lives in Ibiza, meditating, climbing trees, and coaching and charging a lot of money. Fair play to him. But at that stage, there was still that little bit of I want an adventure. Because at Values Level 3, we want adventure and we actually take risks. Um, my interestingly, my wife is out today and tomorrow spending time with her best friend, whose partner of 18 years has just left her. They've been together. She's the older in the partnership. The other partner is younger, and they've been together since this other partner was quite young. And it's really quite easy to see that actually, and also the older partner, my wife's friend, took a lot of responsibility in the relationship, a lot. And it's quite easy to see that the other person didn't, for whatever reason, didn't feel like they'd had that adventure they needed in their life. And therefore they're rebelling, they're acting out. And once they've done that, the next relationship they'll be able to enter into with much more commitment and sustainability. As painful as that is, it's easy to see that's what's been going on. And it helps us again as a parent to see that our children actually need that adventure, that values level 3 phase, to then be able to step into the world of values level 4 and then on from there. And one final thing on that, adults who don't move past values level 3 are those who weren't parented particularly well when they were in values level 2 and 3. So if you learn as a child that manipulation gets you what you want, if you learn that when you cry, you get given an ice cream, if you learn that when you act out, you get rewarded, well, guess what? You're going to carry on doing that as an adult. And sadly, we've got lots of examples of that. Well, not sadly, it just is what it is. A lot of that going on at the moment. Yeah, and final thing on values level 6, help them let go of the pain fueling judgment, or really beautiful word at values level 6 is acceptance. Acceptance of where everyone else is out on the planet, including everyone who's acting out at values level 3. So practicing acceptance is huge at values level 6. I think we'll finish these off and then we'll talk. Values level 7 is about expressing self without causing any negativity to someone else, and seeing holding your boundaries as actually beneficial to the person. So I'll often say to coaches that actually the fee for the client isn't for you, it's for the client to commit. But at values level 5, the fee is definitely for us because we want the car or the nice thing. Values level 7, it's for the client to commit. Not as many around, although in my experience in our coaching circles, there's lots of values level 7 thinking awake. Everybody listening to this will have values level 7 thinking awake. It's just whether we're living in it is another matter. We'll be independent. There won't be a lot of fear knocking around because there'll be deep acceptance that whatever is just whatever is. Deeper relationships rather than general acceptance. I said round the Sunday dinner table a few years ago that I was going to the motivational mapping conference, and one of my family members said, "How many people is going to be at the conference?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know, about 40 or 50." And he went, "That's not a conference." It was quite interesting because in his mind, in his world, the conference is thousands of people. And I get that, I get that. But again, it's an example that if we think differently, we won't actually have general acceptance because we're thinking differently. So key phrase, I've just added, interestingly, a little bit more to this. So typically at values level 7, people are quite private. They're less likely to be in the limelight, in control of their own time, competent, functional, spontaneous, innovative. They'll be detached, which allows for co-independent relationships rather than codependent relationships. that limited negative emotions, or they will still experience them. They'll generally coach themselves, but if you've got values level 7 thinking, which you may have, discuss values level thinking, discuss mission and purpose in life, because they can get a bit lonely just creating success on their own terms, but without actually having a deeper mission and purpose. Discuss having a deeper connection with self, explore deeper meditation, purpose, and practicing that with others, because often there can be a desire to be on own away from lower levels of valuable thinking. There can be a little bit of a shadow of valuable 6 in there. And discuss habits which, if they drop, would allow them to be able to more eloquently step into their deeper mission in life. Because sometimes habits can just stay hidden because they're just like habits that are valuable 4, 5, and 6. You go, well, yeah, that's what everyone does. But actually, is it right that valuable 7 to be having those habits? Does it fueling you? And that, I think, is it really. Just to say, you might not necessarily need to coach and talk about valuable thinking. If somebody's being successful in valuable 4, you don't need to talk about valuable thinking. But when somebody's transitioning or under stress and pressure and their thinking's fluctuating, as you described, Mark, divorce, retirement, illness, then it absolutely is a good time to talk about valuable thinking. Because by bringing them into our awareness, it actually helps them see where they're going and which direction to lean. So, any questions or observations, or anything linked to your 3 points you raised earlier, Mark?
No, I just want another one. A client of mine worked in a university, as a professor, and the conversation we had with regards to basically was helping him with leading his team because he'd never had any sort of formal training. But his frustration was, I think that he was probably in level 5 and 6, but all his team were very much in level 4, and he was trying to get them out because he was leading a part of the university which was basically entrepreneurial sort of business function,
Yeah,
and his function, and he was trying to get people to be entrepreneurial in a institution like
yeah,
a university, which is very much level 4. Yeah, am I right in that sort of thinking? Yeah,
yeah,
because
for
of the way
sure.
that, the structure that's in, people that are working in a university are attracted to it because of those structures, and it's very secure and stable and all those sort of things. And then within that environment, he had to create this business setup with creating commercially commercial products to sell to businesses.
Yeah,
And you could, every session, it was the frustration that he could see the potential and how we could do it, but he just couldn't get everyone on board. Certain people just wouldn't jump into that entrepreneurial space, and it was just about they just. I think it was very much about the environment he was working in, that was the biggest problem, and we did talk about it lots because of, obviously, it was the obvious thing. How do you get people that are working in that environment to be entrepreneurial?
yeah.
So,
I think that's such a good example, Mark. I mean, one that resonates with me. Back in the day, I was run a business development manager for a chain of leisure centres, and we had the job of getting a group of leisure centres to break even. And we were quite entrepreneurial. We hired a new marketing manager. We had quite an entrepreneurial boss, albeit we were operating in a and for a while it worked. For a while we had money to spend, it worked. Um, and then, interestingly, the ability to be entrepreneurial, to invest, to actually, there was a lot of talk around investing to then make money, which was working quite well. And there was a change of leadership, and all of a sudden, pretty much within a year or two, all of the entrepreneurial thinkers, including myself, left.
mm,
So, and I think you will find in that transition, somebody like that will cope with that environment for a period of time, and before inevitably going, it would just easier if I did this for myself, or I did this with a different group of people. And that's where I remember Mark thinking about motivational maps, Mark. Whilst I was in that conflict, two drivers that were in conflict with each other, the spirit and the defender.
mm,
Part of me
mm,
wanted freedom. There was a little smaller part that still wanted the security. which from an NLP point of view was underpinned by fear.
Yeah.
Good, good. Just talking a little bit, going back to divorce again. Me and Haley both got a friend of ours, a client of ours, actually on a course with us shortly. He used this knowledge to kind of cope with quite an uncomfortable divorce where he was very open. I've hurt my wife. I know I have. I haven't behaved in a particularly great way. But then, of course, during the divorce, because of that hurt, his wife was acting out a lot from values level 3, and he had to balance the natural desire to fight for what he perceived to be right versus losing to win, and just getting that balance right. And it is a balance, a tricky balance. So again, these convers and understanding where someone else is coming from a values level thinking perspective, can help us navigate those tricky phase of life around divorce, around retirement. And I've also got a client who's terminally ill, and um, it's interesting because she doesn't believe she's going to die, and that's good. I mean, ultimately she will, and we've had really candid conversations about that, because actually we're all dying and
Yeah.
we're all evolving, and it's then about, well, if I have the best possible 2 years, I'll either still be around in 2 years and 3 years, 4 years, or I won't, but I've had the best possible 2 years along the way. So there's nice conversations that you can lean into around, and actually values level 8 thinking and beyond talks about oneness and wholeness. And if you get into quantum physics and spirituality, ultimately we're all bundles of energy walking around in a larger energy field. So those values level 8 conversations start to come into play there around awareness and who we actually are as human beings, because I do a lot of coaching now where I get people to stand up in a room or to look at that particular one of my mum's paintings is the movie our mind's playing on the screen, and the projector is our brain. And I get people to stand and look at their brain and their mind. And I think it's Mo Gaudat who calls his brain Becky, which is brilliant, because if he's calling his brain Becky, he's not his brain. And I do a lot of conversation around the realizing that we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we are the awareness of our thoughts and emotions, which is why none of us have killed our kids or our partner. Because at some point we might have we might have felt like it. So if we know we're not our thoughts and emotions, that means we have to be, as a human being, higher awareness, spirit, soul, whatever you want to call it, whatever word that's not triggering for people. And if we know that's the essence of being a human being, that energy, that essence is, you can't, as I described to people, you can't kill awareness. Awareness doesn't die. There's certain things that are permanent, and love can't, it's interesting, you can't see love, can you? But we know it exists. You can't see thought, we know it exists. You can't see awareness, yet we know it exists. And quantum physicists get into this and they talk about 73% of the world being dark matter, which they know exists but can't measure. What the hell?
What?
What the hell? What's dark matter? Well, we know it exists. We know that the world is largely made up of it, but we can't measure it. And of course, at values of 8 and beyond, we begin to realize we don't really know that much. We don't really know that much. So I think I've mentioned that just because I've found my conversations with clients who are terminally ill, those sorts of conversations have been quite useful. Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, would be a great resource. Or The Power of Now, also a great resource. The Power of Now, I had a friend of mine whose friend had become paralyzed, and they said the Power of Now changed that client's life, and they are now living a fulfilled life, albeit being paralyzed.
I just before I forget, who was it that created the values level thinking?
So, do you know, for years I thought it was a woman, Claire Graves, but it's not. It's actually a man, Clare, Claire Graves.
Graves.
Yeah, Claire Graves. Look up spiral dynamics. There is a values level thinking elicitation, which we can talk more separately about. So, yeah, I think we've done from a slide point of